The waiting game for threatened reprisals from the Islamic Republic and Hezbollah is continuing. Israeli officials are reportedly convinced that the potential attack from the Lebanese terrorists will likely come first and separate from an Islamic regime strike. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Israel believes that Hezbollah and not Iran will be the first to strike in retaliation for the assassination of its military commander Fuad Shukr in Beirut last week. According to reports in the Hebrew media and CNN, Hezbollah appears close to act independently of an expected Iranian response for the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. Israeli officials believe that the attack from Lebanon can come with little advanced signs, while an Iranian attack will be detected many hours before the enemy rockets reach close to Israeli airspace. Attending a military drill in the north, Defense Minister Gallant said that Hezbollah may hit Israel harder than Iran.
כפי שהדברים מסתמנים, נסראללה עלול לגרור את לבנון לשלם מחירים כבדים ביותר. כבדים ביותר. הם לא מתארים לעצמם מה יכול לקרות. אני מניח שאם הם ייקחו תמונה של עזה הם יבינו.
Heavy cross-border exchanges between Israel and Hezbollah are continuing along the Lebanese border. The IDF targeted and eliminated the terrorist Hassan Fars Jashi in the Joya region of South Lebanon. He served as an anti-tank commander in Hezbollah. Fighter jets attacked terrorist infrastructure of Hezbollah in the areas of Halta and Kafar Kila in South Lebanon. In addition, jets attacked Hezbollah launchers in the Konin region, along with artillery to remove a threat in the Leda region. The Upper Galilee and the Golan Heights were targeted by Hezbollah rockets. Interceptors were launched, crashes were detected in open areas, and there were no casualties reported. Military analysts in Israel are predicting that the coming days are likely to see an extreme escalation.
After a week of perceived anxiety from much of the public after declarations of intended attacks by the Islamic Republic and Hezbollah, the Prime Minister called on the people to remain patient and cool. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz has the full report.
Prime Minister Netanyahu was at the Tel HaShomer Army base meeting new recruits from the Armor and Engineering Corps. The Israeli leader had this to say to the public about the current situation.
אנחנו ממשיכים קדימה לניצחון. אני יודע שאזרחי ישראל נמצאים בדריכות. אני מבקש מכם דבר אחד, לשמור על אורך רוח וקור רוח. אנחנו ערוכים הן להגנה והן להתקפה. אנחנו מכים באויבינו ונחושים גם להגן על עצמנו.
IDF Chief Halevi was at Tel Nof Air Force Base meeting commanders. Halevi said the army is at peak readiness as the attacks from Iran and Hezbollah loom. Halevi said anyone who attacks us or talks about destroying Israel will be targeted. Commanders of the various squadrons reviewed before the Chief of Staff the operational activity, preparation, and readiness of the units.
מוכנות בשיא, גם בהתקפה, גם בהגנה. אנחנו נדע להוציא התקפה מאוד מאוד מהירה. כל מקום בלבנון, כל מקום בעזה, כל מקום במזרח התיכון, מעל הקרקע, מתחת הקרקע.
Meanwhile, in Washington, the U.S. is working feverishly to pressure Iran to back down from its threats.
We would hope that at that OIC meeting, the same thing happens that we have been trying to effectuate throughout the last week, which is that all parties that have a relationship with Iran impress upon Iran, the same way that we've been impressing upon the government of Israel, that they shouldn't take any steps to escalate the conflict.
And now here with us to discuss the looming security threats facing Israel is Lieutenant Colonel Maurice Hirsch of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. Maurice, pleasure to have you on as always. Thank you so much for joining us. Israeli officials are now anticipating potentially a much bigger strike from Hezbollah in the north and not necessarily from the Islamic Republic. What is your take on this? Do you think that this is the path we're probably going to see in the coming weeks?
So at the moment, what appears to be the case is that the Iranians have decided to avoid a massive attack on Israel, going rather for a qualitative strike rather than a quantitative strike. The problem is now just with Hezbollah. And what do you do with Hezbollah? Hezbollah have their own dilemmas. We saw Hassan Nasrallah speaking just a few days ago, really expressing his frustration at the Lebanese people as to why they weren't more supporting Hezbollah's resistance, as he calls it, and their attacks on Israel, fearing obviously that Israel would respond in a massive way to any further Hezbollah escalation of the situation. And so now we're just waiting to see how Hassan Nasrallah will take that into account, what exactly his plan is going to be, what he's really cooking up for himself, in the understanding also that he doesn't necessarily have the full backing of his Iranian masters, as he appeared to have in the initial hours or days even after the strike against Fuad Shukar and against Ismail Haniyeh. So we're really seeing a developing situation on the ground.
Now, we see that the United States has also been quite desperately trying to discourage the regime in Iran from attacking Israel. Do you believe that such efforts can actually succeed? And if so, would it be because of the pressure from the West and other countries, or perhaps even because of the fact that there are over 10 IRGC commanders currently under investigation over the very assassination of Ismail Haniyeh?
I think the U.S. approach to Iran has often been erroneous, misunderstanding both their motivations and their driving forces. But I think there's something that both the US and Iran clearly understand, and that is that Israel's response to an attack wouldn't necessarily only be focused on the kinetic capabilities of Iran, not only attacking their rocket firing or missile firing capabilities, but rather targeting strategic assets. And that, I think, was one of the really most important messages that Israel conveyed to Iran, albeit indirectly, with its strike in Hodeidah against the Houthis, attacking an oil distillery, really setting it on fire, destroying their financial capabilities. And now there's been a lot of discussion about the Iranian Karaj Island, which is the source of 90% of their oil exports, and the understanding that this could potentially be a very real target for Israel. That would have tremendous repercussions on the Iranian economy, which is predominantly funded by their oil exports on the one hand, and also on the world economy, seeing such a large-scale attack on an oil refinery, and that's something that could have really much wider repercussions. So I think the US is trying to persuade the Iranians the price that you're going to pay is not necessarily only going to be military, but also financial, and could really undermine the basis of Iran. And so you should really consider whether this is really the escapade that you want to start into.
Absolutely. We saw even the new president, Pezeshkian, who's by no means a supporter of Israel, has been trying to persuade the Ayatollah himself that perhaps this isn't the best path, and that could lead ultimately to the fall of the regime. So they should consider very, very closely how they want to move forward. Of course, there's also been this discussion of a preemptive strike by Israel. What does Israel stand to lose or to gain from such a move?
Well, so the question really facing Prime Minister Netanyahu at the moment is, who does he want to be? Does he want to be Levi Eshkol on the 4th of June 1967, who sees these really imminent threats to Israel's security and carries out that preemptive strike? Or does he want to be Golda Meir, who's sitting on the morning of Yom Kippur, had already heard all of the warnings that could possibly have been heard, but had waited for the attack to happen? This is something which Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israel in general has to consider. Where is the imminent threat coming from? And is that something that we should conduct a preemptive strike, or wait for our enemies to attack us before we respond?
Now, it seems that as of late, Israel's been very focused on targeted assassinations. Is this a strategy that could ultimately bring Israel victory in the battle against both the Islamic Republic and its proxies?
In short, no. We've seen that, unfortunately, the value of human life in the eyes of our enemies is very, very low. Every single one of these terrorists has its immediate replacement. Better capabilities, worse capabilities, but they don't seem to have that basic value for human life. So eliminating these senior terrorists is obviously something which causes a disruption for those enemies, but it's not something that long term can be seen as a goal which will really deter them or prevent them from continuing on with their aggression. Until you take out all of the Hezbollah capabilities, whether it's Shukar or whether it's Imad Mughniyeh or whether it's the next terrorist who will take their place, it doesn't really matter to them, unfortunately.
All right, well, we are out of time, but Lieutenant Colonel Maurice Hirsch, thank you so much for joining us today, as always.
Thank you very much for having me. Stay safe, everyone.
As Israel waits to see the response of the Islamic Republic, internal turmoil in Iran is being brought to the forefront as a potential reason why Iran may not attack. Let's take a look. According to Iran International, the newly elected Islamic Republic President Masoud Pezeshkian is urging Supreme Leader Khamenei not to attack Israel out of concern for his own presidency's success. The new president is reported as saying that attacking Israel now could lead to a major war in which Israel easily attacks Iran's national infrastructure and energy resources, which could cripple the Iranian economy and potentially lead to the country's collapse. Pezeshkian further warned about the rhetoric and actions of senior IRGC commanders who've placed relentless pressure on a strong military response against Israel for the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, regardless of the significant social and economic costs to Iran. Pezeshkian, however, made sure to note that his opposition to military action is rooted in national interest, as it would severely damage Iran's international standing. Sources present at the meeting between Khamenei and Pezeshkian stated that the supreme leader was non-committal in response to the pleas of the president. In Iran, some sources believe that the assassination of Hamas terror leader Ismail Haniyeh was done by IRGC officials at the behest of Israel for the very purpose of damaging Pezeshkian's new presidency. Despite calls for restraint, Pezeshkian has been very clear in towing the Islamic Republic's line on Israel, affirming repeatedly in meetings with foreign officials that Iran has a right to defend itself and has a right to retaliate against Israel. Pezeshkian's first moves in office were also to right Hamas and Hezbollah and affirm their mutual desire for Israel's destruction. Day 307 of the war in Gaza, and IDF forces are confronting Hamas gunmen on the ground, underground, and from the air. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz has the report.
Forces of the 7th Brigade Combat Team completed their activities in the Bnei Suhila neighborhood of Khan Yunis after weeks of clashes. During the operation, forces located, investigated, and destroyed an underground route. Also located was a Hamas production worksite and a site where there were 3 rooms used by the terrorists to store and manufacture weapons. The Air Force attacked a weapons production workshop of Hamas located in the humanitarian area in Deir el-Balach. Before the attacks, many steps were taken to reduce the chance of harming civilians, including the use of weapons adapted to the type of attack. And the IDF has announced that a top Hamas operative who directed terror attacks in Judea and Samaria was killed in a recent airstrike in Gaza. Nael Sakel was targeted in late July, and the army now confirmed his death. Sakel had been a leader of Hamas's so-called West Bank headquarters for more than a decade, directing attacks on Israel and Judea and Samaria.
As the Islamic Republic investigates how the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh took place in Tehran, there are rumors that several IRGC officers, in fact, planted the bomb in Haniyeh's room even weeks before the assassination took place. Now, here with us to discuss the complexities of this assassination and the next steps for Israel in this war is former Mossad member and CEO of Spy Legends, Avner Avraham. Avner, thank you so much for being with us. I'd love to get started by getting your take on the reports about this Haniyeh assassination. What do we know about what happened so far?
Well, until now, we don't know for sure that Israel is behind the assassination of Haniyeh. But I think that the important thing is that Sinwar is going to replace him, and it means that it's a good way to offer him to get out from Gaza and to do something that we made with Arafat when we gave him the opportunity to leave Beirut. And this is the way that Sinwar can get out from Gaza alive with his people, and we can release the hostages. I believe that I believe and hope that this will be the solution for the situation in Gaza.
Now, there have been some rumors coming from Iran in recent days that perhaps the IRGC did this intentionally to harm the new president's term by starting a war. Do you think that there's any merit to these rumors, or is this just sort of internal chatter inside of Iran right now in such a chaotic situation?
Okay, so if you Google and read about Turkey and Iran, you will find that almost every month they found Mossad agents and they arrest them. The fact that the Israel is very happy for the assassination of Haniya doesn't mean that we are standing behind this operation. And it makes sense that maybe other people, because it was in the headquarters of the special forces in Iran. Okay, it wasn't a regular hotel, so it looks like it's a very, very deep connections to the main intelligence in Iran. So it maybe happened with other people and not Israelis. That's why I don't think that Israeli declared for 100% that we made it.
No, that's absolutely true. Israel has not confirmed that. We should restate that just for our audience to be clear. However, of course, we do see a number of officials from the Islamic Republic declaring that Israel and or Mossad in some capacity did carry out this assassination. There have been dozens of arrests of major IRGC commanders inside of Iran right now, which perhaps is even a factor when it comes to whether or not Iran will carry out a strike in the end. You know, we just heard earlier in the broadcast that we may get a harder barrage of rockets and attack from Hezbollah. What do you think about this recent news? Do you expect more from Iran or from Hezbollah in the coming weeks?
First of all, I think that we have to be ready, but we don't have to sit and wait. And I think that the Iranians always like to send to the front the Houthis and all the other proxies like Hezbollah. So I believe that it will start from Hezbollah, and we will respond, and maybe the Iranian will measure our response. I think that there's also some secret negotiations between many countries to make sure that it will not be a huge damage or a huge war, a wide war. Even Putin asked the Iranian and told them, do not try to attack people in Israel. You can see that Hezbollah is most of the time attack the military bases and not the Israelis people, just soldiers. And so I believe that it will start from the north. And by the way, the Houthis, after the big attack that we made, I think that they didn't do anything. Maybe they sent one message to Eilat. But I think that if I could decide now, I think that is the best time to hit the Houthis, even today.
Interesting. Well, let's hope that the state of Israel takes your advice and does whatever necessary to keep us safe. We are unfortunately out of time. I have many more questions for you, but thank you so much for joining us today, Avner.
Next time. Thank you.
The Jewish Federations of North America have raised over $833 million for Israel since the October 7th Hamas massacre. This marks the largest community mobilization in the Federation's history, providing critical support to various organizations and individuals inside of Israel.
The Jewish Federation of North America have raised over $833 million for Israel since the October 7th Hamas massacre, which is more than half of the total funds donated by the global Jewish community. So far, JFNA has allocated $433 million to around 520 organizations in Israel. This information comes from a new report by the Federation, which tracked funds raised and distributed since early June. Donations have gone toward medical aid, temporary housing, essential food, economic recovery, long-term rehabilitation, and mental health support. The recipients include IDF soldiers, businesses, civilians, and soup kitchens, among others. These donations came from 146 Jewish federations and over 150,000 donors, marking the largest community mobilization campaign in the history of the Federation system to support Israel.
3 Taylor Swift shows have been canceled in Vienna after the government announced a plotted terror attack at the stadium motivated by terror groups ISIS and Al-Qaeda. ILTV's Ariella Lachiani is here with me in studio with more details. Ariella, can you tell me exactly what happened with these concerts?
Right, so as you said, 3 Taylor Swift concerts have been cancelled in Vienna after the government announced that a terror attack was being plotted. at the stadium where the concerts were being held, where 65,000 people were expected to attend. 2 suspects have been arrested, one a 19-year-old who had pledged an oath of allegiance to the Islamic State terror group and also had chemical substances found in his home, and another a 17-year-old who also had ISIS materials and also Al-Qaeda materials in his home. And really? The two were planning to carry out an attack at the stadium, killing as many people as possible using knives and self-made explosives.
Horrific, absolutely horrific. I'm glad it was prevented. You know, we did see after October 7th that there were a lot of excuses made for the Hamas attacks on the Nova Festival, another music event, a music festival where people come together for music, similar to what we've seen at Taylor Swift shows all over the world. Have you seen a difference in how people have responded to the cancellation and the terror plot against these concerts?
To be honest, I think we are yet to see a sufficient response as to what is going on right now. I'd hope that now that it's in Europe and a bit closer to home, that we'll see some more outrage as we have seen with Nova. But the world needs to wake up. 10 months ago, we saw 360 people murdered at a music festival, and the world stayed silent because it was in Israel and because it was an act of resistance. Is it resistance now that it's at a Taylor Swift concert in Europe? Was it resistance in 2017 when over 20 people were murdered in Manchester at an Ariana Grande concert? This isn't resistance. It never has been. It never will be. And people need to understand that. The same people who are standing on college campuses calling for a globalized intifada, this is what they're calling for. This is what they're achieving. And they need to understand that, because I don't think they do. And I think the world needs to wake up and see that the threat of radical Islam is not one that just Israel needs to be dealing with. This is a worldwide problem. And in this case, it was thwarted, thank God.
Yes.
But you shouldn't feel reassured by that. You should feel concerned by that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's very clear that this is not, unfortunately, this is not just an issue that affects the state of Israel. So thank you so much for your analysis today, Ariella. And now, in a deeply symbolic gesture, the Western Wall Heritage Foundation has laid to rest a 400-kilogram stone that fell from the sacred site 6 years ago. ILTV's Mayan Hoffman has more.
In a poignant ceremony, the Western Wall Heritage Foundation completed a significant milestone by burying a stone that had dramatically detached from the Western Wall 6 years ago. The stone, weighing 400 kilometers, fell from the 18th row of the southern part of the wall during the pre-dawn prayer service on the morning after Tisha B'Av in 2018. Miraculously, a woman standing at the time was unharmed. The Israel Antiquities Authority promptly conducted an engineering preservation survey and reinforced the stones of the southern wall within Jewish law restrictions. After extensive discussions led by Rabbi Shmuel Rabinowitz, the rabbi of the Western Wall, and prominent Torah scholars, it was decided that the fallen stone would not be returned to its original place, but would be buried instead. Structural engineers had advised against replacing the stone due to the extensive drilling required, which posed religious challenges. Following this recommendation, the fallen stone was ritually buried yesterday alongside other stones that had been pushed off during the destruction of the Second Temple by Titus. The Tisha B'Av, or 9th of the Hebrew month of Av, day of mourning, will take place next week.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly clear skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of 23 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, sunny skies and hot weather are expected, as temperatures should reach highs of 34 degrees Celsius or 94 degrees Fahrenheit and remain consistent over the weekend. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you for watching.